Yes, yes, thank you.
Okay.
Good morning, Dr. Sahni. This is Saman here.
Hi,
Can you
Saman.
hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Hi, how are you? We're just waiting for a few people to also
Absolutely.
join us in the auditorium because we thought we'll have it online from the labs. But maybe some of us can sit here also and see it on the big screen, and then we can also have a discussion with you then.
Sure.
So,
So here's another thing. What I was planning, Saman, is that I'll speak for about 20-25 minutes and then we'll open it out for questions.
that would be really nice because that's more important to have a discussion. So we'll hear
I will
you,
just
and then
lay
after
out
that
the
we'll open.
landscape, make a few remarks on it. I have some statistics.
What we'll do is we'll have, if the people here in the audience who have questions, then questions directly from the audience, and then also we will pick up questions from the chat box in Microsoft Teams. People might also ask something from their labs. So that
I'll just be guided.
He will ask you the questions from the chat.
I'll be guided by the moderator who will ask me the question because I can't see anyone. So I'm literally speaking to my.
Madam, actually, if you want, you just stop sharing. Actually, then if you then you have to again share so that we can see you on the screen also.
Okay, so I'll do this. Let me just first finish the presentation and then share because I'm a little nervous about tampering with this till it's done.
But not an issue, actually, just
because I'm used to Zoom. I'm not used to Microsoft
Yes, I know.
Teams.
Yeah.
Okay.
Teams is
but
a
this
little
is
complicated.
So far, so good. So let's stay with it and keep it.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
कोई CDRI से बाहर का नहीं क्या मुझे पता नहीं चलेगा ना
नहीं पता चल जाएगा नाम से लेकिन अब नाम कितना ठीक है
उनको पोडियम दिख रहा है
ये इसमें पोडियम दिख रहा है यहाँ तो हमने बैनर लगा रखा है हम इसको स्विच करेंगे आ जाएगा
वो हम लोग यहाँ ऑडियंस के लिए भी तो एंटरटेन करेंगे अभी हम आपको ये जब हम लोग स्विच करेंगे ना आपको वो दिख जाएगा ये व्यू देखिए आपको दिखेगा नीचे दिख रहा होगा
उनको ये
व्यू आ रहा है
English is your preferred language?
Yes.
I will also, I tend to code switch into Hindi also from time to time.
Please do. I mean, we have no advice.
Moving in and out.
Yeah. So questions can come in any language and you comfortable.
Hi.
कौन डील करेगा इसको? हम ऑन करके देखो।
नहीं
10 नंबर बंद करा था जब एक्टिव करना हो।
Young minds do hand holding and strengthen the support structure for creating an enabling work culture. Gender equality is not just women's issue. It is not a gender privilege. True equality is when men and women work together for capacity building. So as you are all aware that today is March 8th and it is celebrated as International Women's Day. And this year's campaign theme is Break the Bias. Deliberate or unconscious bias that makes it difficult for women to move ahead. And on this occasion, we are joined by Dr. Urvashi Sahni. She is well known as an educator, social entrepreneur, and she is the founder of the Study Hall Educational Foundation. Dr. Sahni received her PhD from UC Berkeley. She's an Ashoka Fellow, and she's also a non-resident fellow at the Brookings Institute. She has been invited by government of Uttar Pradesh to serve as a member of steering committee for implementation of National Educational Policy of India. She has also been part of the Rajasthan Chief Minister's Advisory Committee for Education. She has done extensive grassroots work on gender equality and leadership, and her personal journey itself is very inspiring. And today she's going to talk about how to navigate a gendered minefield. And looking forward to your talk, ma'am.
Thank you. I don't know if that's Saman or Niti, but thank you very much, CDRI and your team for inviting me. Before I begin, I want to congratulate everyone for International Women's Day. Let's celebrate ourselves. I also want to CDRI taken up such an important program.
Hello.
I request the viewers to please mute themselves. Thank you.
Okay. So I also want to congratulate CDRI for having taken on such an important program. I'm very sorry that it is open. GATI is only for science institutes. I think we need it for every institution in the country. And if I had my way, gender education would be part of the official curriculum in all over the country, in India and elsewhere too. Anyway, Today I've chosen the topic, and it was prompted by something you said, Neeti, that let's talk about women in leadership. So what I thought I would do was that first just paint the landscape. Let's look at the current situation. What is the gendered landscape like? Okay. Then look at the mines, the landmines that are hidden and not so hidden. What are the problems? And then let's talk together and how we might address some of these problems. Okay. So even before I go into leadership though, I want to tell you a little story. These days is the day of forwards. And so somebody forwarded a video to me day before yesterday saying it was for Women's Day. It was in Punjabi. My parents come from Rawalpindi, Pakistan, which is now Pakistan. And though I was born in Pune, in Maharashtra, and then transported to Lucknow through involuntary migration, marriage, very early. I was barely 18 when I was transported here. So this video is in Punjabi, and I won't play it because I don't know how many Punjabi speakers we have, but I will tell you what it's about. It's about this doctor in Punjab, and a woman doctor, female doctor. And she's telling the story. She said she had gone there with her husband, who's also a doctor, to conduct a medical camp in one of the villages, somewhere near Bhatinda, I think. And as they were walking towards it, they heard a very loud scream. It was almost like a wounded animal. And so they looked and they said, "Ye kya hua?" And people said, everyone just shrugged, kind of a thing. And then finally they saw this dog running and it carrying a small something in his mouth. And it turned out it was a baby's arm. And when they went ahead, they saw this newborn baby girl torn to shreds. She says, "I'm so shocked." And so when she went to the camp, she mentioned this. She says, "Ye kiska bachcha tha?" So they said, "Acha rehne dijiye na, aap apna, let's start the camp." She said, "Nahi, bataiye kiska bachcha tha?" So they said, "Arey, किसी का चौथी बेटी हो गई." तो फिर father ने कहा, "इसका क्या मतलब है?" So then she looked with tears in her eyes and she says, "पता, मैं भी अपने पिता की चौथी बेटी हूँ," this doctor said. और जब उसको फाड़ा गया तो मुझे ऐसे लगा कि मुझे ही फाड़ दिया. I just wanted to share that story. I know it's a celebratory day and we should not be talking about painful things. But just look at the condition of gender, even now, right? तो women leadership की तो बात बहुत दूर रही, उनको जीने दिया जाए उतना ही बहुत है. Okay, let me move on though, on to women leadership. So let's look at the facts and figures first. I know many of you might know these statistics, but I always find that statistics are very, very sobering. जब आंकड़ा समझ में आता है, नजर आता है, then suddenly you get a shock. A female workforce participation rate in India is 20%, 21% of the women, not of the total workforce. Global average is also only 47%. Okay, and we all know as women that we work very, very hard. तो formal workforce participation में इतना कम क्यों है? Let's look at leadership. In political leadership in India, only 13.3% members of parliament and only 8% MLAs are women. And globally, 21% of government ministers are women. We know that in India, we have a 33% reservation for panchayat. At the same time, we also know of this unofficial category called Pradhan Pati, जहाँ पे नाम के लिए उनको leader बना दिया and then who rules in their stead. Moving on to more political leadership, that as of 2021, just 10 countries have a woman head of state and 13 countries have a woman head of government. Head of state meaning president, queen, etc., monarch, and head of government meaning prime ministers, etc. And we all know how well our women leadership has done during the pandemic. In fact, the best performing countries were those headed by women, New Zealand, Germany. India has had only one female prime minister and one female president till date in 72 years. And India has had only 16 female chief ministers till date. And currently, out of the 30, we have only one, though she packs a punch, our own Mamata Banerjee. And she's good for 10, I think. Corporate leadership. In India, only 13.8% company board members are women. Global average is 19.7%. And India only has 4.7% female CEOs, and the global average is 8%. Now, since you are a bunch of scientists and science students, let's look at women in science. In India, only 13% scientists and science faculty are women, while the global average is 28%. Even global average, dekh lo, kitna kam hai. I remember my own school days, and my father was very patriarchal. And I was in an English medium school. In class 9, we had to choose between science and 10. Was zamane mein, and I'm talking about 1968. You had to choose in class 9. So I thought I'll be a doctor, and so I filled in the form and I brought it home for him to sign. He tore it up in front of me. He said, "Nahi, girls science nahi karti hain, and itni lambi padhai nahi shaadi karni." And I couldn't do anything about it. I know that even in our own Prerna school, I found that these are girls from very, very poor backgrounds. I found that many girls, no one taking maths and science. And so I investigated a little and I asked the teachers. जैसे हम ही लोग डिस्करेज कर देते हैं, बड़ा मुश्किल है, इनके लिए घर में टाइम नहीं मिलता, they have to work, तो इसलिए लड़कियां क्या करेंगी साइंस से? And then I made it compulsory. I said, no, girls will do, and we have to stop making science and maths seem as though it is very difficult and more difficult than others. Can we just mute, please, the noise? Someone?
I request the viewers to please mute themselves. Vivek? Okay, thank you. Ma'am, please go ahead.
So we see how in science particularly,
Vivek? Santosh, if you're there, can you please...
Ma'am, I am muting everyone. Huh?
Please mute everybody except Dr. Sahni.
Thank you so much. So
please mute Arvind also. Unmute. Unmute.
Why are there so few women in all these fields, and what are the barriers? All right. I told you a little bit about the way teachers have discouraged them, the way parents have discouraged them. You know, patriarchy, I think, if you were to use one word. भाई साहब, आप election analysis बाद में देख लीजिएगा, please इसको थोड़ी देर बंद करेंगे?
हाँ, मैं mute कर दिया, हाँ.
Okay. So that patriarchy is a huge barrier. I know that in my own case, and I know that from all our students. And patriarchy doesn't mean that only men have a patriarchal mindset. Institutions have a patriarchal mindset. Women have a patriarchal mindset too. And I'll explain that in a little way. So for example, when my father said कि नहीं औरतें डॉक्टर नहीं बनती हैं, क्या साइंस करना है और शादी करनी है, 8 साल कौन पढ़ाई कराएगा? Did I resist? Did I protest? I first of all didn't have the courage to. I was way too frightened of him. And then I felt, well, maybe he's right, because he was my father and I thought he knew the best. He was the head of the family. My mother didn't support me in it either. Right. So there was one girl lost out to science, as are hundreds and thousands of girls. And even those who make it, let me give you this other even more outrageous statistic, that 50% of medical students are women. I didn't know that, but here you go. But only 17% of allopathic doctors are women. What happened to the rest? What happened to the 33%? And in Pakistan, I have many friends and colleagues, and they told me 50% of female doctors never work after graduation. And why don't they? Kya ho jata hai? And this is not just in science. If you look even at, MBA, you would find two, man and woman, both in the same MBA course. And then if you look at them 10 years later, the man will be the CEO of the company, perhaps, or very high up. And the woman is, well, nowhere to be seen, either not using her degree, or if she's using it, still struggling, and we don't know why. Okay. So what are the barriers? Okay. 2 or 3 years ago, I gave a talk at the KGMU. Again, these were doctors, readers, medical students, and it was about gender. And after I'd spoken about how women themselves accept a second-rate citizenship in their own homes, never mind outside. They will do the double duty, they will take on everything and yet never be an important decision maker. As I was walking off after the talk to have tea, there were these senior lecturers, readers, professors walking with me. And you know what they said? They said, "Ma'am, hamare saath bhi to aisa hi hai." Right? So this is not just a case of uneducated women or women who are unaware. It is highly educated women with PhDs. They are doctors, they are scientists. And yet, somewhere deeply internalized is the oppressor that we don't deserve to be leaders. We don't deserve to be number one. We'll always play a subordinate role. Here's another statistic. We know this, but let's see the statistic. That women spend 4.1 times more time doing unpaid care work than men in Asia and the Pacific. In India, women spend 299 minutes a day on unpaid domestic services, while men spend 97 minutes. And when you mention this, there's almost a shrug of, well, so what's new and why is this important? Of course, women will do all the care work. Of course, they will take care of the children. Of course, they will take care of the elderly. Of course, they will be responsible for the kitchen, for the home, for everything. Look after their men, look after their families. That is their job. That's their primary job. ऊपर से if they want to work and be a scientist and ठीक है वो भी कर लो दिल के लिए बहलाने के लिए अच्छी बात है, but that is your primary duty and उसको चूकना नहीं चाहिए. How many of us, how many women carry the guilt of oh, we are ignoring our family, oh, we are neglecting them and my work is taking precedence, right? And here I'll give you an interesting anecdote again. एक कोई थे, both of them were consultants in Boston Consultancy Group. ये American company है, very big, very higher up, and only very highly educated people get a job there. So there's this girl, Maina, and she was coming to work in Rajasthan. So she would come on Mondays and she would leave Thursday nights, and she was married. उसी का colleague, same qualification, same everything. He was also doing this. So he told her once, he said, your husband must be finding it very difficult. Ki, you're 4 days. I mean, how does he manage? Who looks after him? Kaise hota hai? So she turned around and told him, she says, your wife also must be finding it so difficult. You're here 4 days in a week. How does she look after herself? What happens? And wo chup kar gaya. It never occurred to him that how his wife would also be finding it stressful, because he took it for granted that a woman's job is to take care of the family. So if she's taking care of herself, to ek hi baat hai na, right? So this double duty, which we do not take seriously enough, is a huge reason for the statistic you saw before of 21%. It's one of the very strong reasons that you find that so many doctors graduate, then don't become doctors. And so many people get their masters, their PhDs, then don't work because ghar mein manahi bhi hai. And secondly, so many of them get exhausted by double work. Many of you who are here, I really would like to know, how many of your husbands actually cooperate and work, share the household work with you, share the caregiving work with you? Or are you still carrying double duty and getting exhausted? My guess is that most of you are. I have conducted many trainings with men too. And बहुत जोर से कहीं हाँ औरतों को आज भी बड़े मैसेजेस आए, हैप्पी इंटरनेशनल वुमेन्स डे वगैरह वगैरह, यूर अमेजिंग, ये वो फला ढमका. लेकिन उनसे कहो ना कभी ट्रेनिंग में कि आपको भी, कहते हैं women should do everything that men do. They are doing it and वाह वाह. My question always is, and when will men do everything that women do? झाड़ू, पोछा, कटका, खाना पकाना, बच्चों को देखना. अरे ये बात बोलो ही तो जब सबके मुंह इतने छोटे से हो जाते हैं, सांप सूंघ जाता है कि अरे हाँ ये कौन सी बात है. तो एक बार I was training these principals in Rajasthan, 71 of them, all men. And finally I had to tell them. I said, sir, इससे इतना खौफ क्यों है? आखिर पतीला ही तो है, बम तो नहीं, झाड़ू ही है, बंदूक तो नहीं. Then I realized they prefer the banduk and the patila and the bomb to the jhadu and the patila. Huge resistance. And if you look at it carefully, the caste system is very strongly related to that. This is all considered lower menial work and only meant for lower menial types of people. And women are considered कि ये आप ही के लिए ठीक है. This is women's work. Even more important, I think, the barrier, and many of us need to recognize that. I know it took me a long time to understand that. We have internalized a view of ourselves as less than men and therefore deserving subordinate roles. I mean, no one will say that to look at me. But you know, when you're married off so early into a strange land, city where you know nobody and you're completely at the mercy of your husband and in-laws, एक चुप्पी सी सा छा जाती है. And all your life you have seen your father be the decision maker and unka खौफ सबका. Everyone so frightened of him, always doing exactly what he says, no one ever challenging him. Then that's what you internalize. And of course, boys internalize the same too. And then it may find it very hard to think of ourselves as equal. And when we don't think of ourselves as equal, it is very hard to act equal, right? I remember I must have been 27 or 28 when one day in the middle of the night,
Reconnect. Someone you have the number?
We lost the connection. Santoshi, is there a problem?
Yeah, we are trying to contact Dr. Urvashi. She'll join back. Santoshi, Dr. Urvashi will join back again. So you will have to help her again to share the screen. So Dr. Urvashi, have you joined back?
Ma'am, we are admitting Dr. Urvashi.
Okay, great. संतोष आप ज्वाइन करवा पा रहे हैं?
यस मैम, एक्चुअली उनका कुछ मैं लगता है नेटवर्क की थोड़ा इशू है, थोड़ा एडमिट में टाइम लग रहा है उनके में। उनकी स्टेज पे है बेसिकली।
ओके ओके।
हाँ, नाउ probably he have joined. Hello, Dr. Urvashi? Yeah.
Ji, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm not going to turn on the presentation. It was nearly, over. I'll just speak because I think it's safer with this. My internet is a little iffy, so I'm warning you. So what I was saying was that most importantly, I think when we look at the minefield, one of the biggest mines that I have found is, of course, patriarchy is a huge barrier. But more importantly, it's the internalized oppressor. We don't perceive ourselves as equal autonomous persons. Women get so used to living by permission. Even when they achieve high ranks, they'll be scientists, they'll be like all of you, they will be teachers, they will be doctors. And at the same time, they still don't handle their own finances, for example. They still don't take on equal leadership role in the family. They still have a very sexist, patriarchal view of the ways in which their daughters should behave, their sons should behave, their daughters-in-law should behave, and of course, how they should behave. And that is the biggest barrier to surmount. Once you've overcome that, many things become easier, and it does not happen overnight. I know that, as I mentioned, that I must have been 28, mother of 2 girls. And I remember waking up at night and thinking to myself, God, I'm equal, and I deserve everything that everyone else. And I knew I had the good sense not to say it out loudly because I knew it wouldn't be accepted very well. When my daughters were born, when the first one was born, everyone said, Chalo koi baat nahi, agla beta hoga. When the second one was born, I also cried. I wept because I felt I had blighted my family's hopes. अरे बेटा होना चाहिए था. What kind of a woman am I? कि 2 बेटियां, घर का क्या होगा and all. And it was then when my daughter was welcomed so coldly at home that my heart broke for the sweet little child. And also I got angry. And anger is a revolutionary emotion. And that's when I decided that no, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. And it helped me evict that internalized oppressor a little more. You asked about my personal journey, and I'm going to be 67 this month. And I can tell you that most of my life has been spent in keeping track of this internalized oppressor and kicking it out bit by bit by bit by bit by bit. It is so insidious. It is so insidious. Even in education, which is why I mentioned earlier that mera bas chale to I would have gender education, and I advocate for that very strongly on all the committees that I am, for boys and girls both. And what does that mean? It means that helping girls realize that they are equal, they are autonomous, they deserve respect. They are equal citizens in a country that constitutionally gives them an equal right. Never mind what religion or society might say. A patriarchy is antithetical to democracy. It should not exist, but it does. That's because we still have a feudal mindset. So trying to educate girls out of, deconstruct those norms and reconstruct an egalitarian picture of themselves and of society. And we want to do the same for boys as well. Telling them, boys, patriarchy is not your fault. You didn't make it. At the same time, it is very cruel to your sisters, your mothers, your future girlfriends, wives, all daughters, all the women you love. And it gives you unearned power and privilege. So what will you do? How will you change this? How will you change yourself? Yeniki will protect them. No, not so easy. Usme bhi mukka maki. No, what will you do to change yourselves? Why are the streets so unsafe for us? Why are workplaces so unsafe for women? So, and I think that is why I'm so delighted that you're doing this program, that the government has thought of it, and I wish there were more. They should be there everywhere. Because you need men and women both to become aware of how gendered their lives are, how gendered their perceptions of themselves and their colleagues are, and how patriarchal conceptions and notions are embedded in our institutions and how they function. You saw all the statistics. And so what are we going to do about it? Most importantly, first, we need to change these mindsets. These kind of trainings should be happening regularly. We do that continuously. We have critical dialogue with our staff, with our students, a free-flowing dialogue of what is wrong with patriarchy, why should it not exist, who does it serve, who does it not serve. Then, of course, the one word that nobody wants to talk about, or sometimes that is the only thing that is talked about, is the sexual harassment in the workplace. I have those figures in my presentation, which are horrific. 81%, believe me, which is so high. And this is India we are talking about. Let me give you other statistics. We spoke about female feticide, sex-selective abortions. 1 million, nearly 1 million a year. Okay. Secondly, the highest rates of child marriage, which I like to call girl slavery, in the world. 1/3 of all the child brides or girl slaves are in India. 4 rapes an hour. And this is not counting all the sexual violence that happens at home. That is not even considered. And actually, family is probably the most oppressive place for women. And marriage, one of the biggest culprits. Right? So look at this. When you're talking about sexual harassment in the workplace, look at all the sexual harassment that is happening all over the place. Okay. So why are we surprised that it happens in the workplace? If it happens in families, why will it not happen in the workplace? So what do we do with that? Most importantly, we need to break the silence. Even in families, why is it so rampant? Because the women themselves keep quiet and mothers ही instruct करती हैं कि चुप कर जाओ. I know personally, and I'm not ashamed to admit it because I was the victim. I have faced it in my own home as I was growing up, not once, several times. Helpers, cousins, uncles, luckily not raped, but molested. And I remember telling my mother once, I must have been 5. And so she said, चुप, पिताजी को नहीं पता चलना चाहिए. क्यों? क्योंकि उनको बहुत गुस्सा आएगा, पिट ना डाले. पीटना चाहिए था, right? But चुप. अच्छा, चाचा जी का नहीं, चुप, 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 चुप. Because women feel कि somehow they feel, because even though they're the victims, they are ashamed because this happened as though it was their fault. घर की इज्जत का. This इज्जत is such a kavach which we need to get rid of and redefine for ourselves. So we need to break the silence. There are all kinds of committees now, POSCO and sexual harassment committees. But most importantly, we have Me Too. We have the Me Too movement, which is a very good thing, and I laud it. But most importantly, men and women need to have a healthy conversation about these things. In your workplace, when you're sitting in the canteen, when you're sitting in your staff rooms, there should be an open conversation about power. Who has it, who doesn't have it, and why? About democracy, about sexual harassment. These critical dialogues should form part of your everyday conversation. The trouble why power grows rampantly, and some groups have it and others don't, in terms of caste, in terms of religion, in terms of class, in terms of gender, is because no one wants to discuss power. No one wants to discuss it. वो पॉलिटिशियंस का काम है. अरे भाई, पॉलिटिशियंस का काम है, लेकिन आपकी तो रोजमर्रा की जिंदगी में है, तो करना नहीं चाहिए. In schools, we encourage open discourse on power. So there are people who tell us, पर ये स्कूल में इसकी क्या जरूरत है? आखिर this is तो ऐसे तो फिर कहाँ होगा, आप मुझे बताइए. स्कूल में नहीं होगा, घर में नहीं होगा, सड़क पे नहीं होगा, but power will be exercised. पर उसकी बात कोई नहीं करेगा, तो फिर कहाँ होना चाहिए? In all educational institutions, it should happen. It is not enough just to make laws. We have a law against child marriage. And I gave you the statistics. क्यों? क्योंकि इसके बारे में कोई बात नहीं करना चाहता कि क्यों गलत है. We have eradicated polio. We have eradicated so many diseases because we ran full-on campaigns, vaccination campaigns. Pandemic में देखो कितना vaccination campaign किया. अब ये इतनी जबरदस्त एंडेमिक बीमारी है, it affects half your population, इसके लिए कैंपेन क्यों नहीं है? होना चाहिए ना, होना चाहिए ना. और कैंपेन केवल कोई ऊपर से नहीं आके चलाएगा. हम लोग राउंड अप नहीं कर सकते. You have this GATI program. You should not stop with just having these workshops and talks. You should have these discussions every day amongst your people. Make it part of what you do, because it really is important and it impacts many people. And then the other thing, since this is about women's leaders, and I will then say a few words and stop so we can have an interaction while my internet is still alive, is that, you know, as women leaders, and I've caught myself at that, we shortchange ourselves a great deal. And sometimes we don't recognize the patriarchal barriers or the discrimination that we face. Why this person gets the promotion and I don't. Why it says कि नहीं आपका तो बहुत stress family का भी है, बहुत सी responsibilities हैं, so let's give it to the man. It's not always stated. And what do we do about it? Do we protest? Do we resist? I found, and let me just ask you a very simple question. I asked this to my students. अच्छा बेटा घर में कौन किसको मारता है? कहते हाँ पापा लोग मारते हैं दर्द पी के. मैंने कहा मम्मी ने कभी मारा? हंस देते हैं. मैंने कहा क्यों? बहुत दुबली पतली है क्या? कहती नहीं नहीं ऐसे औरतें कहा पति को कैसे मार सकती हैं, मतलब वो तो अच्छा वो बाहर कोई मारेगा तो? कहते अरे वहां पे तो हाथ पकड़ लेंगे. अच्छा तो यहाँ क्यों नहीं पकड़ते? Because again, the internalized oppressor that this is not something we can do. So when we face discrimination, do we speak up? Even for myself, I know my brothers, one went to engineering college, one got BCom, one did BSc in chemistry. और मुझे क्या किया? एक साल home science, फिर शादी. Did I protest? No, because I didn't think I could. I didn't like it, but I couldn't protest because I didn't think I had the right to do it. So I think helping women see that they have the legitimate right to protest, to demand, to seek is very, very, very important. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is for us to have women leaders in every sphere. I think the world is in a mess because it's very lopsided. We have only one gender running the world. You know what's happening in Ukraine, you know what is all the many conflicts we have all over the world. So I don't need to say more about that. You need both. And you need women who will take pride in being women and not start acting like men the moment they become leaders. I know that when I took on the leadership of my own organization, I founded it, and so I was really an unwilling, reluctant leader because, well, who else was going to do it? I behaved like my father at the time because he was the only leader that I knew as a role model, you know, autocratic, hierarchical, all of that. But thankfully, I'm a woman and my womanhood kicked in and I learned that no, there are nurturing, consultative, loving, caring ways of leading, participatory ways of leading, democratic ways of leading, leadership that is more emotionally intelligent. And I think women are very good at that. They're very good at that. That's provided they value themselves as women leaders and don't start emulating the men leaders that they see. In fact, that's what you need. Having this gentling influence, having this complementary influence, which is why you need more women leaders. In this, I must confess that I am guilty too. And when I say leaders, I mean political leaders too. And of course, leaders in science. And maybe we will find that people will use technology more ethically, more in a more creative, growth-oriented way rather than in a destructive way. I remember I've been asked several times to stand for office, political office, and I have just shied away from it. Again, I think it is the internalized oppressor that I haven't been able to fully conquer. It's too late now. And I remember my mother, when I told her once, she says, "Nahi, tum meri kasam khao that you'll never do this. Noch dalenge, phad dalenge, bilkul bhi nahi karna." Women are afraid of the public domain because it has been made so unsafe for women, right? And my answer to that is that we must prepare both our boys and girls to clean up the public space and to make it safe for all of us. And I think as our numbers increase in leadership positions, we will be able to find that it becomes a safer, more welcoming place. I want to just stop by. So I would encourage women to step up to leadership roles, to claim their half of the sky, and to assume their rightful place as co-leaders of the world. I'm going to stop there, Saman, and if there are questions, I'm happy to take them. In fact, I welcome now, let's have an open discussion.
men, you have rightly said that both men and women have to work together and clean up the space, and we need to have a dialogue. With this, I would open the house for interaction. People who have questions and who have joined online can put it in the chat box. We'll start from the audience present in the auditorium. So if there are questions, yes. Okay, Monica, then Seema and Rumaisa. Monica, can you please introduce yourself and then ask the question?
Hello. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Go ahead,
Okay.
please.
So it was wonderful coverage. My name is Dr. Monica Sahni. What I wanted to raise a point here, you talked about girls' education, giving confidence to girls. Of course, I agree with that. But what I feel majorly lacking here is educating guys. And educating guys since their childhood, filling their minds. Come on, your sister, your friends, your mother is at the equal stage. You have to take care of them at the same time. Whatever they are doing in the kitchen, in the bathroom, you also have to be able to do that. It's like it needs to be inculcated. Household responsibility is not only belong to your sister and mother. You have to be part of this so that tomorrow after marriage, they have to realize it. They have to contribute 50-50 in the household responsibility.
Yes, Monica, I agree totally. And in fact, I mentioned it, that even more important perhaps is working with boys so that we educate them in living. And I told you that this is the one bastion. अब जब भी किसी मर्दों की gathering में ये बात कहिए, I told you ना बिल्कुल सांप सूंघ जाता है. That is one place they don't want to go. वो नहीं करना है और कुछ भी. And by the way, let me tell you, mothers-in-law and mothers also resist in this. I remember we do a lot of boys education in our school as well. And one mother came fighting with us. कि मेरा बेटा घर का काम नहीं करेगा, आप क्यों कहते हो उसको करे? ये नहीं अच्छा लगता है हमको. ये लड़की का काम है. अब क्यों आप इस तरह की बातें स्कूल में मत दिखाया करें. But then we saw that as an opportunity to sit her down and explain things. And she understood. Yes. The next question, comment?
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
I'm audible.
Hi,
ma'am. I'm Seema, and I'm in the second year of the PhD and joined the PhD in Jan 2020. And I'm the mother of 2 kids. So whenever I decide to join the PhD, my husband sacrifices job for my PhD. But because of my PhD, he left his job. So another problem is that another blame game is started. The society, even my colleagues and other members says, because of you, your husband is jobless now. He lose his respects. Even though in my neighborhood, some of the women ask my son, he's just 6-year-old, and what she said that, Beta, your papa is not working, your papa is at home. So how can I deal this type of situation, and what kind of education should I give to my two? Because of my both kids are son. So what kind of education should I give to my sons that the mama is going to PhD and papa is taking care of them? So I want to know how to deal this situation.
Yeah. I'm so sorry, Seema, that this has happened in your family. But let me tell you, I think one of the counters that I want to make is, this is one story that you're telling us where your husband lost his job or gave up his job so that he could support you. I think 99% of women are doing that all their life. They are not working so they can support the husband. They are not doing so many things so that they can support the husband, support the family. They have the same degrees, but they will stay at home so that they can look after everything, support the husband's career, celebrate the husband's career, and sometimes even be happy doing it, right? उसको कभी कोई बुरा नहीं मानता है, because जो तो आपका काम है, supportive role तो आपका है ही. किसने कहा? Here why you're facing all of this is because you are playing the leadership role, right? And that is very difficult for people to accept. Very difficult for people to accept. I think the way to deal with that is one, not to care about it. That's how systems change. And even with your children, to say them that this is a very good role model. बेटा कभी कोई करता है, कभी कोई करता है. ठीक है? अब मामा की जब PhD हो जाएगी, then Papa will take, and maybe then you will play some sort of a supportive role and help. से हम लोग एक दूसरे को support करके ही आगे गृहस्थी बढ़ती है. I think this is a good opportunity to talk to your students and also to your neighbors and everyone. Take them on. When they tell you, give them counter examples and talk to them. Don't just ignore them, but enter. See, I'm telling you, no democracy will flourish unless we have open and free dialogue about power. And in this case also, it's a power imbalance that they're complaining about. So talk to them. Say, अच्छा बैठिए, आइए चाय पीजिए and let's talk about it. मैंने सुना आपने ये कहा, बताइए आपको क्या तकलीफ है? आप मतलब आपने भी तो इतनी sacrifices दी ना अपने पति के लिए, तो आज इन्होंने दे दी तो क्यों तकलीफ हो रही है? Talk to them. Talk to your family about it. Take them on. And I'm sure your husband will support you in this and he will also talk to them.
Hello, ma'am. Myself Shikha. Ma'am, मेरी family जो है, my husband is 5 brothers and myself 5 sisters. तो हमारी upbringing ऐसी हुई कि हमारे father teaching में हैं और हम लोगों को fully educate किया. सब BSc MSc, बट शादी सबकी अर्ली हो गई और हस्बैंड भी सबको सपोर्टिव मिली. तो इस तरह की इश्यूज तो मैंने नहीं फेस किए कि तुम शायद शुरू से देखा माँ को काम करते तो काम हम लोग करते हैं. बट मैम अभी का सिनेरियो जो है, जो मेरी देवरानी आई वो कहती है कि आप वर्किंग हैं तो आप काम क्यों करती हैं. तो वो कहती है मैं वर्किंग हूँ तो मैं काम नहीं करूँगी,
मतलब
और
घर
वो
का
काम नहीं करती है फैमिली में. तो इस तरह की सिचुएशन भी है जो है सोसाइटी में.
ओके शिखा, देयर इज अ क्वेश्चन आई हैव.
हाँ,
शायद ठीक से समझी नहीं. वो क्या कह रही है, आप वर्किंग कर रही हैं तो घर का काम क्यों करती हैं? इज दैट व्हाट शिखा? हाँ,
तो मैं कहती हूँ कि हमारा वर्किंग प्लेस पे जो काम है वो अलग है, बट घर तो हमें देखना है ना. हम नहीं करेंगे, हम बच्चों का टेक केयर नहीं करेंगे तो हस्बैंड क्या करें? जो एजुकेशन मैं दे सकती हूँ बच्चों को, अपब्रिंगिंग, उतना हस्बैंड शायद ना दे पाए.
ओके ओके.
तो मैंने देखा कि वर्किंग वुमेन्स जो हैं, इस मतलब मैं तो मिड की हूँ, लेकिन इस समय की जो हैं वो कहती हैं हम वर्किंग है तो हम काम ही नहीं करेंगे. तो ऐसे भी क्या चलेगा? ये भी माइंडसेट क्या सही है?
ओके. तो शिखा मुझे एक बात बताइए, नहीं करेंगे वाली बात नहीं है, बट आई हैव अ क्वेश्चन. तो आपके पति आधा काम क्यों ना करें? और आप क्यों, व्हाई डू यू एक्सपेक्ट? उनकी भी उतनी ही क्वालिफिकेशन है बच्चों की पढ़ाई में, बच्चों की परवरिश में. व्हाई डू यू थिंक वो नहीं कर पाएंगे? राइट? अगर आप बाहर का काम भी कर रही हैं तो आधे घर का काम आपके पति को आपके साथ करना चाहिए ना. आधा तो
हेल्प तो मुझे मिलती है, मुझे तो हेल्प मिलती है, लेकिन ये माइंडसेट भी मैंने देखा है औरतों में अब कि वो कहती है हम वर्किंग है तो हम नहीं, हम घर का जैसे जेंट्स है सेम वैसे हम रहेंगे. ये माइंडसेट कहाँ तक सही है?
तो फिर आई थिंक शी शुड ट्राई इट फॉर सम टाइम एंड सी कि फिर उसके बाद काम कोई होता ही नहीं है घर का, तो उनको देखना पड़ेगा कि मिल बांट कर वो भी करना पड़ेगा. देखिए माय व्यू इज वेरी क्लियर ऑन दिस कि बाहर का काम भी दोनों संभालें और घर का काम भी दोनों संभालें. नॉर्मली पतियों से ही रेजिस्टेंस होती है, दे डोंट वांट टू हेल्प विद द हाउसवर्क. आई नो अमेरिका में भी आई हैव सीन इंडियन कपल्स.
मैंने इंदिरा नूई का एक जो है इंटरव्यू देखा था, तो उसमें उन्होंने कहा कि आप तभी खुश रह सकते हैं जब आप घर पे जाएं तो आप ये भूल जाएं कि आप एक जॉब करते हैं, आप CEO हैं, आप प्रोफेसर हैं. आप घर पे हैं तो आप मदर हैं, आप एक बहू हैं, आप एक माँ हैं. है ना? अगर इस माइंडसेट के साथ आप जाएंगे घर तभी आप घर पे खुश रहेंगे।
तो शिखा
मुझे तो लगता है ये
मुझे बताइए द सेम गोल्स फॉर द मेन टू ना, उनको भी घर आके भूल जाना चाहिए कि वो सीईओ, उनको भी होना चाहिए कि हम पिता हैं, पति हैं और एक सन इन लॉ है, राइट? तो उनको भी फिर घर में उसी तरह की जिम्मेदारी करनी चाहिए। देखिए ज्यादातर ये बर्डन इसीलिए औरतों पे, इसलिए मैंने डबल ड्यूटी की बात की।
जहाँ दोनों वर्किंग है वहाँ तो ये अंडरस्टैंडिंग तो बहुत जरूरी है।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल। एंड एक्चुअली आई टेल यू that this is another one of that internalized oppressor जो औरतों को छोड़ना पड़ेगा। And sometimes जो आपकी देवरानी की बात है, it is sometimes a reaction to this double duty. It's almost like a rebellion and revolution कि अच्छा तो फिर नहीं करेंगे, या तो दोनों करें या कोई ना करे, right? अब कोई ना करे तो घर ही ना चलेगा, इसलिए दोनों को करना पड़ेगा। जी हाँ, बताएं।
Hello ma'am, I'm Rumaisa. I just want to ask now, how can we enable the gender equality? And rightly you said that women, like I feel myself that we are somewhere responsible. Because for example, if we see husband is helping women in any of the household work, friends, family, they always say, wow, you're very lucky. But when the same women is doing job tirelessly, taking care of the children, we never say a man, you're lucky enough to have a wife like this. And somewhere I think we are ourselves responsible for this, because we always say, yeah, I'm very lucky to have you. But I don't think a man never said, I'm lucky to have you because you also work tirelessly day and night.
Correct. You know, beta, I didn't get your name. क्या नाम आपने बताया? What was your name?
Rumaisa.
Amansa. You know, I'm glad you raised this. That is why I said it is not only men who are patriarchal, women are patriarchal too. And उनके मन में भी ये फंसा है that ये तो औरतों का काम है ही. So उनको इतनी शाबाशी देने की क्या जरूरत है? मर्द करते हैं तो somehow it is a very condescending thing कि देखो कितना महान है कि ये सब कर रहे हैं. So we need to change this mindset in everybody. That's why in girls and in boys too. As I told you, it is many of the mothers who objected when we were trying to get boys to participate in housework, because they said नहीं, ये छोटा काम मेरा बेटा नहीं करेगा. इसलिए उनके साथ बैठ के ये बातचीत करनी पड़ती है कि छोटा बड़ा काम क्या है और क्यों ये छोटा काम है, और छोटा काम है तो क्या औरत छोटी है इसलिए वो करेगी, और छोटी क्यों है, थोड़ा हम ये भी तो समझें. Right? So it needs this kind, and that's why women need to speak up and our men need to speak up. Hota kya, I find many men, they privately they support their wives, but publicly नहीं वो parents का respect और वहाँ पे कुछ नहीं पढ़ते, वहाँ मर्द बन जाते हैं. So they also need to rethink what it means to be a mard. A gentle, caring, nurturing, supportive man is also a very, very strong mard. In fact, even stronger. So it is important for that too. Yeah.
Hi ma'am, I'm Tribini. I will take this opportunity to say that I'm been very lucky to come from a family where both my mother and my father had opinions in running the family. And that kind of gave me an opportunity to harbor opinions. But once I faced the outer world, I realized that opinionated women are often mocked at. There's this thing that, so you are a woman, how much would you know about politics? Or how much would you know about a certain thing that you're giving an opinion on? Somewhere our education or whatever, if we are at par with men also, it's considered to be a little less. I don't know why. And then it often comes the volume is high, the pitch is high, and the knowledge is less.
Okay. Sometimes. May I? Yeah. So, Neeti, right?
No, ma'am, Tribini.
Okay, sorry.
So I had just wanted to ask, sorry, I just felt this, I felt this that sometimes that is what made me stop giving opinions at all or sharing my notions. I often feel that in order to get accepted, I would probably not give my opinion. I mean, how do I deal with this?
Okay. First, let me tell you, the education is the same, right? Once again, it is feeling that you have the right to voice an opinion. Okay. And it is assumed that when women have opinions, then they are aggressive. Then they are too assertive, or they're good. And there is always a way of, acha tum bhi boli. And then there's a way of putting them down, which is something you have to resist. And secondly, child, who has stopped you from informing yourself? After all, everything is available on the net. Why are you waiting for someone to come and educate you? Why will you not educate yourselves, right? Why will you not equip yourself with the right information that you need? Why are we waiting that somebody else will educate us? And this is a very common kind of resistance and a very common kind of ways in which women are silenced. That aapko kuch nahi aata. Not just that, women also do it, by the way, to each other or to their men. Kuch baat hogi, they will ask the man. I remember I did it. I would expect that, we both went abroad at the same time and it was his first trip and my first trip. I somehow expected him to know everything. Now, why should he know? He knew as much as I did. But वो था ना कि मर्दों को तो सब कुछ आना चाहिए. So we also have this feeling. The other thing that I want to guard women against is what has happened over years and with history is that women have assumed of the place that the domestic sphere is their sphere, their legitimate sphere. And वो उसी में घसी रहती हैं. When they meet each other, exchanging recipes and clothes and things like that, which is great. Lots of fun. We have very interesting conversations around all that. But sometimes that's all that happens. And you leave politics, and you'll find the men are in another place, they're discussing politics. And let me tell you, वहाँ भी इतना factual information high rate नहीं है. वो भी कम है. लेकिन उनको कोई बोलने वाला नहीं है कि आपको कुछ आता नहीं है. Right? और ये बड़े confidence से आपको बता देते कि आपको कुछ आता नहीं है. Right? क्योंकि एक कोई औरत चली जाएगी वहां डरते डरते और कुछ बोलेगी तो वो इस तरह कर देते हैं. So importantly, first of all, you have to claim the space, claim the public space, and then inform yourself. इस जमाने में self-learning and lifelong learning is really important. And I keep telling women that you need to claim the public space. You really need to do that. Even the streets. ठेका ले रखा है क्या? उतना टैक्स आप भी देते हो, हम भी देते हैं, तो काहे को that women can't go out at night? I remember जब ये कर्फ्यू ये हुआ ना, जब वो रेप के केस हो जाते हैं तो फिर बहुत सरकार इमीडिएटली कहती है 8 बजे के बाद लड़कियों को बाहर नहीं जाना चाहिए, एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा. तो किसी ने बड़े अच्छी तरह से कहा, लेट्स हैव अ काउंटर रूल. 8 बजे के बाद कोई भी मर्द अकेले विदाउट हिज वाइफ और सिस्टर और डॉटर नहीं जाएगा, तो सब ठीक हो जाएगा. So I mentioned that as a joke. You won't believe it. Many of my male colleagues, अरे मैडम पे हमारी कोचिंग का क्या होगा, ये क्या होगा, वो क्या होगा. I said, देखा, अब देखा, how many opportunities you feel you will not get, and you randomly, routinely, you apply this in all women because the streets are not safe. वो अपने ही आप नहीं जाती, अपने ही कर्फ्यू खुद पे लगा लिया. But उसमें देखो कितना फिर लॉस होता है, वो हम देखते ही नहीं. So I think it is very important. अब जब voting हो रही थी elections में, we ran 280 voter meetings in villages with women, saying, think of yourselves as citizens, hold the government accountable, and say, why are the streets not safe for me and my daughter? किसी government ने आज तक नहीं किया है. आप करोगे तो वोट देंगे, नहीं तो नहीं देंगे. Right? We don't demand. वो हम अपना कर्फ्यू खुद ही लगा लेते हैं, अपने मुंह खुद ही बंद कर लेते हैं, अपनी आंखें खुद ही बंद कर लेती हैं. But at the same time, once more, I don't want to leave the entire onus on women only. Men own half the sky right now, much more than they should. आप क्या करोगे? What will you do for gender equality? How will you change? How will you change the system? And one last thing, let's not wait for the system to land and change from top. नहीं होगा. If we had kept waiting for the British to give us our independence, मिलता क्या? देते. संघर्ष किया तो मिला ना. So women and men together need to fight the patriarchal monster. It has no place in a democracy. And let's welcome and invite democracy into our minds, into our hearts, into our institutions. तब जाके आपका ये गति कार्यक्रम successful होगा. Thank you, Samar. I know we've gone over.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sahni, for this very, very wonderful session. I will, before I end, there are a couple of things that I want to raise also with the audience, because there are many students here and also faculty members, women faculty members that are part of GATI. In the institutional program of GATI, we're looking at 2 levels of gender equity. The first level, of course, is our PhD students. I mean, we have at this time 48% of our PhD students. We have around 500 PhD students, close to 500 PhD students in the institute, and around 48% of them are women. So this is a very, very large number of women in the workforce, but in the PhD level workforce. But as you go up, and as scientist positions, permanent faculty positions are advertised, and people are taken in, one sees that the numbers fall. And currently in the institute, we have around 17% women as scientists. So clearly, there's a big difference between what we have as researchers and then what we have as scientist staff. So as part of GATI also, we try, the whole question is, how do you change this? What sort of issues do you address? Where do the problems lie? Is it in the mindset of the individuals? Is it societal conditioning? Is it the way the institute runs? Is it the way the institute deals with its colleagues? I mean, there are many levels of, of gender equity and how to understand gender equity. So as a sort of, start, as an initial thing, Neeti and the GATI team. So the GATI team, you would like to know, has both men and women, I think in equal numbers. So we have, the GATI team is a team with both genders. But so they made a questionnaire, and I'll just share some, I mean, not the entire result, but there was a question in the questionnaire which was basically targeted to women students and also to men students, but I think generally to women students, which said that, will you leave your PhD? And mind you, this PhD entrance and the fact that you are in a PhD program in CDRI does not come easily. It's very, very competitive. Students, only students who have a national scholarship, are CSIR net qualified, etc., get to apply. Then there's an interview, and it's not easy to get in. So clearly, students who are good, bright, have got all this, get in, and they work very hard for their PhD program. The question asked was that if you get married, would you leave your PhD? Now, I would have expected that 100% of the girls, because they've come through all this, would have said, no, we will not leave it. But to my surprise, around 20 to 25% of them said that they would leave their PhD program, which is really sad because, when they say yes to a questionnaire, when there is no external pressure on them currently, right, 20% of them are giving in right before they have got married. So once they get married and there are actual pressures, there will be many more who will drop out. And, this is something that all of us here should think of, and all of you girls who said, yes, we will leave and we will not sort of even deal with this question with our families should think about. Because that's part of the reason why we have so many women at the higher levels. Because, at the entry levels, we have fewer women. And then, of course, as leadership grows, responsibilities grow, promotions happen, there are, of course, biases. And many, many fewer women end up at higher levels of leadership. So this is something that we need to take on continuously in the institution. And I think, so CDRI, by and large, I think is a fairly good place to work in as far as gender issues are concerned. We have all our committees in place. We try and deal with these issues, but still issues happen, things happen, and they are dealt with. It's not as if we are perfect. But women need to have greater confidence in themselves and the ability to take their own position in society that is due to them. So thank you very much, Dr. Sahni.
May I just end with one concluding statement? Since you brought up this marriage institution and you saw me mention it a little earlier, I want to say this to all women, all your students here, all your faculty here. And you're probably the special lot. Like you said, you've made it so far, right? But I'm even talking about generally all women. Somehow, and I can't tell you how much I speak to women about this. Unke dimag mein ye hai, marriage is some kind of a safe path. It's, marriage/career, right? It's not ki marriage is a relationship and career has nothing to do with it. वो तो चलता ही रहेगा. Somehow girls are not raised to believe that they must earn their own living. And I think women need to unlearn that and say every individual has to earn their own living outside and inside the home. And so isliye, why should marriage be? I think there should have been a second question after that. Will you give it up? And why? If you will give it up, why? That would be and I think the double duty is important, and then also all kinds of societal norms. So I think, and one last thing I'll leave you with, Saman, since you have taken on this program, I highly recommend, and I can't tell you how useful it will be, if you will organize a series, at least once a month, a critical dialogue session amongst your own colleagues at different levels. Students ka apna ho, colleagues ka apna ho, where you raise these issues, you tease them, you wrestle with them, and you try to change each other's minds, you debate them, you contest them. Because you're a science institute doesn't mean you should not be dealing with social and political issues. You should be, and I'm glad you are. And so that should become part of what you do. When I say that, even in our college we do it, by the way. Our students do that once a week. मैं तो आपको once a month कह रही हूँ क्योंकि you are a very important organization. पर आप उसको जितना कर सकें, because committees will not do it, and also that will help you reflect on what is the culture of our organization. Is it a safe space? Is it an egalitarian place? सामने नहीं नजर आता है कभी, लगता है, पर एक दूसरे की बात सुनिए, एक दूसरे से बात करिए, तब जाके समझ में आएगा, and you'll know what to change over there. And with that, thank you very much, Saman, for having given me the opportunity. And very happy Women's Day to all the women and men, for all their wonderful women too.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sahni. Thank you very much for joining us today, and a happy Women's Day to you too. You've been one of those inspiring people for many of us, for our children, to go to your school and learn good things and be gender conscious, right, as future citizens of this country. Thank you very much. Thank you. So all of you here are invited for tea outside. So online, people who are online can walk to the auditorium now and have tea.